They've been working really hard to get our IT from the 1800s up to at least the 21st century. So thank you very much. We probably will have a few glitches here and there, but thank you for all of your hard work. This meeting of Community Affairs and Planning meeting is held in a hybrid meeting format with virtual and in-person participation by members of public staff and council. This meeting is also being live streamed and may be viewed online at ajax.ca/live. This is our first meeting cycle with this new format and technology being, please be patient with us if we encounter any technical or procedural challenges. Additionally, a friendly reminder to all participants to please use their mics at all times for the benefit of those participating in council chambers and joining us remotely. I'm going to call this meeting to order. All members of council are present. We have Regional Councillor Lee is remote, and Mayor Collier is remote, and Joanne Dyes has a family emergency and is unable to join us this evening and sends her regrets. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we are gathered is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas. More specifically, the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatory of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788, and the Williams Treaty of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home to Indigenous people. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action and acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. I am going to ask if there is any disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, I can assume that the online have no? Okay. I have a motion moved by Councillor Henry, seconded by Councillor Morin, that the minutes of the Community Affairs and Planning Committee meeting held on February the 6th be adopted. Is there any questions or comments? Oh, I have to remind you one thing, that if you're voting, we no longer put hands up. We have to call a vote so that everybody can be recorded. So is there any questions on the minutes? I'm going to call the vote. And if you can vote. Okay, thank you very much. All right, our first presentation is on PDS 2023-11, 836 Riverside Drive. You can start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Josh Estrella. I'm a planner here with the town. I will be providing an overview of the staff's review and recommendation for the zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Coghlan Developments Limited to facilitate residential development of lands municipally known as 836 Riverside Drive. The subject lands are located on the west side of Riverside Drive, approximately 275 meters south of Roslyn Road West. The subject lands were occupied by a single detached dwelling, which was demolished in the fall of 2022. The lot is currently vacant. The western portion of the subject lands are occupied by environmental features associated with the Urfé Creek Valley lands. The subject lands are surrounded by the following uses. To the west is the Urfé Creek and associated environmentally sensitive lands. To the north is a similarly sized property containing a single detached dwelling, and further north of that are single detached dwellings. Immediately to the east is Riverside Drive. Further east is the Riverside Golf Club. To the south are single detached dwellings and condominium townhouse units. In July 2022, the applicant submitted land division applications to the region of Durham to sever the subject lands and create 5 developable lots for single detached dwellings. The land division applications were approved by the Region of Durham's Land Division Committee in September 2022. A condition of approval requires that the subject lands be brought into compliance with the town's zoning bylaw to enable the development of 5 single detached dwellings on severed lots. Therefore, the zoning bylaw amendment application will largely do 2 things. Rezone most of the subject land to residential zone that permits single detached dwellings that are suitable for the severed lots on their size, which are similar to the surrounding area that are also currently occupied by single detached dwellings. Additionally, it will rezone lands that are part of the Urfé Creek Valley to environmental protection. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment has been reviewed against the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, and the Region of Durham's official plan. The proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms with the growth plan and the region's official plan. Regarding guiding documents within the town, the subject lands are currently designated low-density residential in the Town of Ajax official plan. Low-density residential designation permits single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, duplex dwellings, linked dwellings, and street townhouse dwellings up to a maximum density of 30 units per hectare. A maximum height of 3 stories is permitted within this designation. The proposed development of 5 single detached dwellings on the subject land will generate a density of approximately 18 units per net hectare, which is within the permitted density range. The proposed development conforms with the low density designation of the town's official plan. Regarding the town's zoning bylaw, the subject lands are currently zoned country residential. Detached dwellings are permitted in the country residential zone. However, the development standards for this zone do not support the development as proposed. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will establish the appropriate residential zone and development standards based on the size of the severed parcels. The finer details of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment are to rezone a portion of the subject lands from country residential to environmental protection, to rezone a portion of the subject lands from country residential zone to residential 1D zone, to establish site-specific development standards for the maximum garage width, driveway width, apron, and curb cut for all lots, and finally to establish various setbacks to address the irregularly shaped lot located at the south end of the subject property. The following materials have been submitted in support of the zoning bylaw amendment, all of which have been reviewed and deemed satisfactory by various town departments and external agencies. The environmental impact study, which determines the limits of development for the subject lands, has recommended a vegetation protection zone and buffer land be established to prevent any impact the proposed development may have on the environmentally sensitive lands located to the west. The vegetation protection zone is identified as parts 9 and 10 on the proposed development, on the proposed plan, and it will be zoned environmental protection and conveyed to the TRCA, the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, to be held in public ownership. The conveyance of these lands will be secured through a development agreement. Staff are of the opinion that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is appropriate for the future development of the subject lands, and it facilitates the development of 5 single detached dwellings. Based on the foregoing, staff recommend approval of zoning bylaw amendment application Z422, and that the implementing zoning bylaw, as per attachment 1 of the report, be provided to council for consideration at a future council meeting. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I will also note that the applicant's consultants are here and are also able to speak to the application.
Thank you very much. I do have a speakers list. As far as this is a public meeting, we've not had any questions submitted on this property.
That is correct. Clerks has not received any comments or submissions.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that this is moved by Mayor Collier, seconded by Councillor Morin, and my first person on the speakers list is Councillor Morin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Estrella, for your presentation, and I'm happy to see some, 5 single low-density dwellings coming to, our little Ward 1. There's so much emphasis right now on residential intensification, which I understand, but it's nice to see that more options. I think ultimately it's great that we can provide as many, not we can provide, but that Ajax residents have an option for all kinds of different housing, and this speaks to that. I would also like to ask you, can you just clarify, did you say the TRCA as far as the surrounding area? You mentioned that, but when I looked, I didn't see it on the page when you were there. So you said that, lack of a better word, had their blessing, or that they were, could you speak to that? Through the chair. Thank you.
Yes, the TRCA has reviewed the application and has also reviewed the environmental impacts study, which was included as part of the application. They will be taking a portion of the lands and have agreed to support the development.
Great, thank you. And my other question, if I may, Madam Chair, is as far as the traffic impact, I realize it's only 5 homes and 5 families coming in, or 5 people coming in. Is there anything scheduled, through you, Chair, is there something scheduled for more traffic work along that area? Is there going to be widening? Is there going to be more stop signs or anything like that tied to this project? Or coincidentally coming around the same time? Or because I didn't say anything about that in the report.
Through the chair, we are taking a portion of the property for the Riverside Drive expansion. In terms of the timing of that, I'm not aware. Perhaps my colleague, Ms. Andis or Mr. Scopacasa can speak to that.
Yeah, through the chair, I'm not aware of any widening in our forecast. We are taking widenings through development to secure for such a widening to increase the traveled portion of the road, but it's not in our future forecast.
Okay. That's my questions for now. Thank you.
Councillor Henry.
Through the chair, I'd like to ask with regards to, I heard something in there with regards to widening of the lots for parking, maximum parking on site. And I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Through the chair, the parking requirement for this development, when it's time to build the houses, is 2 parking spots per dwelling unit. The proposed design is for 2 in the garage and 2 in the driveway for the development. In addition, they have a typical driveway adjacent walkway, which is permitted under our zoning bylaw, that would permit parking, use of that walkway for parking in terms of a bylaw perspective, but not counted towards, for example, an accessory apartment or that sort of use.
Just to clarify through the chair, two in the driveway and two in the garage. And when you say the driveway, you're talking from the driveway from the sidewalk forward to the garage, correct?
Through the chair, correct.
Is there parking available? Is this on a sidewalk?
Through the chair, can the counselor clarify that?
Some units have a sidewalk going through like where you have the apron at the end. That's what I'm asking about. Is there additional parking there or not?
Perhaps Mr. Skopakas or Ms. Andis can speak to that.
I believe that is a side.
There,
is a
there will be a
sidewalk.
sidewalk.
Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Estrella. Great job. I just have a question about, is there a time frame that you can outline for us?
Perhaps through the chair, perhaps it's better that the applicant speak to that as after they receive approvals, it's on their timeframe to construct.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait and ask at that time. Thank you, Chair.
If there's no other questions, could we have the applicant, he's online, correct? I think I saw him. There he is. And Councillor Bauer, if you wanted to ask your question now, he's online now. Hi.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of committee.
Good evening. There you go.
So
Councillor Bauer.
maybe what I'll do is I'll give you a small presentation and I will answer Councillor Bauer's question as part of the presentation.
Sure, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
And then I'm still happy to answer any questions, should there still be any, when I'm done. So good evening. Thank you very much for letting me present on this application. My name is TJ Sakura. I am the president of Design Plan Services, and we are the planning consultants for Coghlan Developments Limited on this subject application. Can we go to the next slide, please? I'm going to abbreviate my presentation because staff did a good job of setting the context and the application that's in front of you. So I'm going to flip through these slides a little more quickly than I had planned. Council's familiar with the location of this property, just on the west side of Riverside, south of Rossland. The next slide, please. So this is a schematic of the proposed development where the houses would be potentially located. They are going to be consistent in design and look with all of the other houses that are north of them on Riverside Drive, and there's 3 houses to the south of them as part of the former condominium development to the south. So once these are built, it will look fairly consistent all the way down Riverside Drive, except for the property immediately to the north, which is still undeveloped, but I would anticipate a similar development to come in at some point in the future. Next slide, please. So under the region of Durham, obviously the lands are designated for development as living areas. Next slide, please. Designated as low density residential in the town of Ajax official plan, and that is exactly what is proposed through this rezoning. Next slide, please. And so the zoning details, as Mr. Estrella noted, are for the R1D zone, and the area at the back of the property to the west will be zoned EP. That will also be dedicated to the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, and there has been extensive work done with the Conservation Authority to ensure that they are amenable to this application and that we are meeting all their requirements. Next slide, please. So there's one application in front of committee tonight. We did have a public meeting back a couple of months ago, and there was no concerns raised with the proposal itself. There was a question about on-street parking during construction, and we will attempt to minimize that as much as possible. And the next slide is the last slide. I just want to thank staff for working with us on this. We concur with the recommendation in the staff report. Mr. Ian McCulloch is here with me on the line. Should there be any questions for the owner that I cannot answer? In terms of timing of this application, subject to approval by council of the final zoning bylaw, the applicant will be moving to building permits as soon as possible. And if everything goes well, there may be some construction started this year that is the intention, to get these under construction as soon as possible. And I'm happy to answer any other questions should there be any this evening.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bauer, did that answer your question, or did you have any more?
Chair, yes, that answered my question. Thank you very much, Mr. Sakura.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? I realize that this is for zoning only. My only concern, I had just had one resident already ask me about trees being cut down. I don't know if any work has been done on that site at all. I can only imagine that if a tree was cut down, it was already been blessed to be cut down.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes,
if
there
that's
are
the
some
right
very
way to say it.
specific rules.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, there are some very specific rules about tree removal, and we've been working very closely with city staff to begin the preparations on the site. And yes, there has been some work started on the site, but it has all been done with whatever permits are required by the town or any other governing body.
Yeah, and again, I realize this is for zoning. There's only one other caution that I just wanted to bring up was we've had some issues with dust from the golf course across the street. So as much as we can keep that at a minimal, that would be greatly appreciated from Councillor Moran and myself, if possible. But other than
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll take it under advisement and do our best to control any issues on site.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any questions at all? Okay, so we have the motion on the floor that the zoning bylaw be amendment application Z4-22 be approved and that the amending zoning bylaw be provided to council for its consideration at a future council meeting. It is moved by Mayor Collier and seconded by Councillor Moran. Voting is open? Great, thank you very much. Our next presentation is on Envision Durham, the municipal comprehensive review that never ends. So, thank you, Sean, for being the expert in this field.
Control L.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sean McCullough. I'm the Supervisor of Planning Policy and Research here at the Town of Ajax. And tonight I am here to present the draft regional official plan, as well as staff's comments on this never-ending project, which we hope will come to an end soon. So first up, the Municipal Comprehensive Review is a process that is required to bring the region's official plan into conformity with the growth plan. Now, as all you may know, this has been a long and complex process that started in 2018. In 2019, a series of discussion papers were released on various topics, everything from the environment to the urban and rural systems. There was also consultation that was initiated in that year as well. Throughout 2020 and 2021, consultation included a process for landowners to request employment area conversions, as well as settlement area boundary expansions. There was also the release of the growth management study, technical reports, which looked at everything from growth projections to intensification opportunities to community areas and, of course, employment areas. In 2022, the region released the final growth management study and initiated consultation on the settlement area boundary expansions. It also released the regional natural heritage system and the the agricultural areas mapping for the new regional official plan. Throughout this process, staff have also been a member of the Area Municipal Working Group, working with the regional staff, conservation authority staff, as well as staff from other area municipalities. And this process has not been without its challenges. Since 2018, there have been multiple amendments to the growth plan, changing the allocations, as well as moving the time horizon from 2041 to 2051, essentially moving the target mid-process. There have been significant changes to provincial legislation that have upended all work plans. There have been many minister zoning orders, which have had an impact on calculations of available employment land and community area lands as they've gone through that calculation. There have been major removals from the Greenbelt Plan area, and of course there have been land use scenarios prepared and presented by industry rather than staff. And all of this has had a major impact on the completion of this process. And first off, I'd just like to commend regional staff for getting it this far. Now, the new regional official plan was released on February 10th of this year for consultation, and the draft official plan includes 12 chapters that guide economic growth, infrastructure, agricultural lands, the natural environment, and strive to create healthy in communities. It also creates a regional structure comprised of strategic growth areas, community areas, employment areas, and a rural system. In terms of the regional structure, this section establishes the population and employment allocations to each area municipality, shown here. These are important numbers that will be incorporated into the town's official plan. They are also used in almost all long-term strategies, infrastructure planning, and municipal finance tools, such as the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the Library Master Plan, financial tools such as Development Charge Background Study, Parkland Dedication Bylaw, just to name a few of them. Ajax is projected to see significant growth, growing from approximately 131,000 residents to 199,000 residents by 2051. This is an increase of 51% between 2020 and 2051. Employment growth is also projected to see a significant jump from approximately 37,000 jobs to almost 62,000 jobs over the same time frame. Now, this target is ambitious and will require the construction of approximately 1,070 units per year. However, this is less than the housing pledge, which required the municipality to look at 1,800 units per year. For context, the town has averaged about 730 units per year since 2006. Currently, we have approximately 9,800 units in various stages of the planning approval process, and staff do support these growth allocations. Intensification targets are to be addressed in the Vibrant Urban Systems chapter, which I'll discuss momentarily, but it's helpful to discuss in the context of this growth. First, it should be noted that intensification is not just how many tall buildings that we will build. It comes in many forms. This target is measured against how many units are constructed within the built-up area, or the built boundary as it's also referred to, and that's the area shown in beige on your map. Units that are built in the beige area count towards the intensification target, and new units are mostly planned to be accommodated in the town's intensification areas, including downtown Ajax, uptown Ajax, Pickering Village, the Ajax GO Station mixed-use major transit station area, as well as the Midtown corridor. There will also be growth along regional corridors and local corridors, and infill development such as new townhouses, lot severances such as the one we just saw, as well as accessory apartments that would also be constructed in the beige area, all contribute to this intensification target. In Ajax, 86% of our growth is expected to be through intensification, representing 25% of the region's total target. This also represents an increase in the town's intensification rate from 54% in the current official plan. Now, this is expected given the diminishing greenfield area that the town does have, and again, staff support this target. The Healthy Communities chapter is a new chapter that touches on many topics such as housing options, affordable housing, rental housing policies to prevent or discourage the demolition of rental units unless certain criteria or replacement units are provided. It also includes a variety of climate change policies such as greenhouse gas reduction targets to achieve net zero by 2050, nature-based climate solutions, and the promotion of urban agriculture. Policies that promote good urban design, age-friendly planning, and community hubs are also included. And then there are policies that promote the preservation of cultural heritage resources and historic downtowns. Staff have identified a number of comments on this section and seek to strengthen the language and support many of the policies. Some of these include encouraging bird-friendly design and green roofs, requiring minimum electric vehicle or electric vehicle-ready charging parking spaces, and recommending that language be changed from downtown to heritage character areas to ensure that policies are representative of the many historic centers that have existed across the region, such as Pickering Village. The Vibrant Urban Systems chapter establishes a policy framework representative of the hierarchy of growth areas across the region. We have 2 urban growth centers, which are in Pickering and Oshawa. This includes, we also have regional centers such as downtown Ajax and uptown Ajax, and again, the major transit station area, such as the Ajax GO station. There's also a new rapid transit corridors designation along Kingston Road and Simcoe Street in Oshawa. The rapid transit corridor elevates the importance of Kingston Road as a key intensification and growth corridor to support the future BRT and potential for LRT in the future. Now, the employment area conversion requests that were supported by Ajax Council have also been reflected in the new regional official plan, and all areas have been changed to community areas, except for the location on Bailey Street, where a site-specific policy has been established to permit a grocery store, which aligns with Council's position on the matter. There are also policies related to community areas, including matters that would be required during secondary planning in designated greenfield areas. This policy also identifies that those areas will be required to achieve a minimum of 50 people and jobs per hectare, which aligns with the growth plan requirement. Staff have included a comment that recommends that a minimum designated greenfield area target of 57 people and jobs be applied, as that aligns with the land use scenario that was selected by Regional Council. There have also been several small adjustments to the boundaries of the Uptown Regional Center and the Downtown Regional Center. In the Uptown, lands that were subject to employment area conversion request CNR 07 at the southeast corner of Kerrison and Salem, and also a recent MZO request that came before this council. This area has been added to the Uptown Regional Center, which is supported by staff. In the downtown, there's a couple of minor adjustments. Lands containing the New Salvation Army, St. Timothy's Church, as well as the Lord Durham Park have all been added to the Downtown Regional Center. And staff support these adjustments as they will contribute to growth as well as the services offered in the downtown. Staff have also included comments that request that the boundaries of the regional corridor along Harwood Avenue between the Uptown Regional Center and the Downtown Regional Center just be aligned to reflect the Midtown Corridor designation in our current official plan. The 2051 Urban Expansion Area section is a new section added to the Vibrant Urban Systems chapter and outlines policy and study requirements prior to permitting growth in the new settlement area boundary expansions, and these areas are shown in hatching on the map. This also includes the northeast Pickering area. The draft regional official plan is reflective of Land Use Scenario 2A, which was prepared by the Building Industry and Land Development Association and was approved by Regional Council against regional staff's recommendation. As a result, 3,761 hectares of land have been added to the urban area boundary. This represents approximately 60% of the Whitebelt land. And the settlement area boundary expansion, they exhaust the remaining Whitebelt land in both Whitby and Oshawa, and the balance is roughly divided between Pickering and Clarington. Prior to the lands being developed in the 2051 urban area expansion area, various studies and other supporting documentation will need to be completed during the secondary planning stage. And this includes items such as infrastructure phasing plans, fiscal impact studies, master environmental servicing plans, delineation and identification of the regional centers, corridors and major open space designation, delineation, studies that identify the natural heritage system and how the natural cover targets in the watershed plans will be achieved, as well as agricultural impact studies, among many others. Policies have also been included to address many matters identified in watershed plans. In this case, staff have reviewed the policies against the management recommendations in the Carruthers Creek Watershed Plan and confirmed that appropriate policies and study requirements have been included. These include completion of a hydraulic assessment, delineation of the natural hazards such as flooding, and identification of appropriate mitigation measures, which could include measures such as regional storm controls. It also requires that flood mitigation solutions be determined, which could involve reopening the Lower Carruthers environmental assessment, and associated cost-sharing agreements be entered into, which could include timing for the implementation, as well as cost related to studies, engineering design, constructions, and maintenance of any of those mitigation solutions. There's also policy to ensure that all other Carruthers Creek watershed management recommendations be addressed. Prior to the release of the draft official plan, staff had also provided comments to the region to add policy to ensure that consultation continues between the town of Ajax, the city of Pickering, the region of Durham, and the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. The Greenland system has policy to protect, enhance, and restore the regional natural heritage system and the water resource system. This includes the major open space designation, which is predominantly for environmental protection, but may also include agricultural uses or major recreational uses through amendment to the region's official plan. There are also policies related to the Oak Ridges Moraine, as well as waterfront areas, which are generally areas located along the Ajax waterfront and other waterfronts across the region. They generally support environmental protection and passive recreational uses. The regional natural heritage system has been identified as an overlay. Development and site alteration is prohibited in the regional natural heritage system, which would be required to be demonstrated through an environmental impact study if there was any development adjacent to those areas. The policy also requires that area municipal official plans include policy to protect the natural heritage system, identify enhancement areas, linkages, and minimum vegetation protection zones. There's also a woodlands target of 40% and policies related to drinking water protection. The region has also added the urban river valleys designation as identified in the Greenbelt Plan. Staff are recommending the policy be updated to encourage landowners to convey land to public authority when located in the urban river valley. The region has also identified what is called an enhanced opportunity areas. And these are generally linkages that support the regional natural heritage system. Some areas from the enhanced natural heritage system identified in the Carruthers Creek Watershed Plan have been identified as these enhancement opportunity areas. Staff are recommending that this policy be strengthened and to require consideration of enhancement opportunity areas during secondary planning. Requiring it to be considered during secondary planning also aligns with the requirements mentioned earlier in the 2051 urban expansion areas. And this will help achieve the watershed targets. The thriving rural system applies to much of the region. The region has gone through an exercise to implement provincial agricultural areas mapping, and this has identified both prime agricultural areas and rural areas. And through this process, the region could make minor refinements. In Ajax, lands located north of Highway 401 in the Greenbelt have been designated prime agriculture, as shown here on this map in the red circle. The prime agricultural area designation is intended to preserve agricultural uses and permits agricultural related and on-farm diversified uses. On-farm diversified uses permit an agricultural operation up to 2% of the site area to a maximum of 1 hectare, and this could include things such as agritourism uses, home-based businesses, or even renewable energy installations like ground-mounted solar. Now, staff have noted that the Audley Recreation Center has been designated prime agriculture. While this use would be permitted to continue to operate, staff are recommending that the Audley Recreation Center be removed from the prime agricultural designation, or that a site-specific policy be applied to this to recognize the use, just so we avoid any issues in the future. Now, the region has identified that the removal of the Greenbelt Plan as a Special Study Area 6. They've also added policies that align with messaging from the province in the Environmental Registry of Ontario posting, which indicate that lands that significant progress on approvals be achieved by the end of 2023, that construction start on homes no later than 2025, and proponents fully fund the necessary infrastructure. Now, I will highlight that these conditions are subject to the satisfaction of the province, and their inclusion in the regional official plan, it's questionable what weight they would actually have. Now, for clarification, these lands have not been considered in the context of the population and employment growth forecast. If housing is to occur on these lands, the region will have a surplus of lands needed to meet the population forecast. Now, staff's comments identify that these lands may be considered in revised forecast, or sorry, that's what the region has identified. But staff have commented that simply that this will result in a surplus of lands at this time. Now, as for next steps, comments on the draft regional official plan are due today. While these comments will not be ratified by council until April 17th, pending tonight, the outcome of tonight's meeting, staff will send a draft of the comments to the regional planning staff just so they can start considering them in their review. The staff report has indicated a quick turnaround on the final regional official plan, which is to be presented at regional council before the summer recess. At least that's what their report has indicated. Once the regional official plan is adopted by regional council, it will be sent to the province for approval. And then there's Bill 23. So with Durham set to become an upper tier municipality without planning authority, the new regional official plan would eventually be transferred to the area municipalities such as the town. The process for transition appears to be dependent on what the status of that official plan is when those final sections of Bill 23 are proclaimed into force. So we'll continue to keep council updated on those matters as we progress through the next steps. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your report. I have Regional Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. McCullough, for the presentation. I also am very glad to be at the end of this journey. My actually a very simple question is: so that letter, that pledge we had committed to, what happens now with that? So it's just like we sent the letter out. We I said, province, we got it. We'll take care of this number. But then, like, is there anything beyond that? Like, is there a response we're expecting from that, or they just wanted us to, kiss their ring, so to speak?
Through the chair to Regional Councillor Lee. So we are going to have to report on our housing numbers as we move forward. So that is something that the province released. We're waiting for a template from the province that just outlines how we have to go back in a number of years, identify how many housing units we've constructed over the last couple of years, and then show our progress that way. But through that housing pledge, we did include a condition in there that these numbers continue to be used for the purposes of our planning, our official plan and our other strategic planning documents. So moving forward, these numbers would continue to apply to all of those.
And what happens if we're like, we have like a year or two bad years, like something happens and we fall behind? What happens? Like if we can't fulfill like our a quota for 1 or 2 years, is there a penalty? What's the stick, so to speak?
So through the chair to Regional Councillor Lee, to my knowledge, there's no penalty. And again, I think that was actually one of our other conditions, was that the town not be penalized for achieving those, recognizing that housing growth is entirely driven by the market. We can position our land uses to best accommodate those housing units, but ultimately it's up to builders and community partners to deliver on those housing units.
Okay. Well, I absolutely thank you and your staff for all the hundreds of hours you guys have put into this. And thank you, Chair, for the questions.
Thank you. Mayor Collier? Mayor Collier, I think we lost you. We'll go to Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Mr. McCullough. Thank you for the presentation. I had a question. If you could please explain to me again, it's page 4 of the report, the very first bullet that talks about requiring an amendment to the ROP to convert a rental property to condominium tenure if special criteria are not met. Can you just explain that to me again? Because I think when the housing strategy was presented, we talked that we don't want that to happen. Is that right?
So through the chair to Councillor Bauer, so correct, there are policies in the region's official plan, and some of those criteria are things like ensuring that there's at least a 3% vacancy rate of rental units across the region for it to be even considered. And maybe Ms. Andis might be able to remember what some of the current rates are, but we're significantly below that.
Okay.
There are policies in place that would continue to prevent that from happening unless they were to demonstrate how they were going to provide additional rental units, replacement units, or those types of items. The region has included policies that if it just can't be done for whatever reason, it's a very small development or something, then there is an opportunity for them to go through that process. But ultimately, there is an amendment to the regional official plan that would be needed. So that process would go to regional council to make a decision on that. But moving forward under Bill 23, I don't know how that will work out. We'll have to
Right.
report back to council on that.
Okay. So we don't want to lose these rental properties, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question was, at the end of the report, when you talked about if removal from the green belt will result in surplus lands. So if that happens, then will those surplus lands be returned to the green belt? Like what happens at that point?
So through the chair to Councillor Bauer, at this time, as I mentioned, the region has included the criteria that the province had established, and what the province does, whether they return those lands back to the Greenbelt, is yet to be seen. If they were to remain and if they were to be developed through this process, it wouldn't be till the next update to the region's official plan or the next allocation of those growth numbers that that land would be included in the calculations,
Okay.
and you would likely require less land at that time
Right.
for future development. So it would start to it would catch up and be caught at that time. But we're really stuck at this weird time where it's not great to include those lands in the region's official plan because it locks them in. But at the same time, the land the amount should be considered in that analysis to demonstrate that there is too much land being
Right.
identified for residential growth.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Those are my questions, Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Collier? Councillor Morin?
Thank you, Madam.
Oh, no, wait, I think I put the wrong person in. Sorry. Sorry, Nancy, can you put your name back in? There you go.
Am I on? Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. McAuliffe. Thank you for your presentation and for everyone that worked on this massive report and study. I just can't even believe how big it is. Councillor Bauer kind of already asked the question, but more specifically, is the province listening when this council and with staff report coming back after the meeting that we had, where we identified enough room for 17,000 new residents, new units, and then we identified up to almost double that, 32,000, which was great, without touching the greenbelt. Is the province listening to that? Are they going to have a, oh, okay moment? Like, can you speak to that process? Because it's in this report that as of 2025, we're supposed to be building on that greenbelt. So, it's kind of concerning when you look at it, like it's coming. So are they going to honor, or not sort of honor, but recognize what we're saying here in this council and saying we can cover the 17,000 homes times 2 without touching the greenbelt?
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Tyler Morin, I wish I could answer that. I'm really not sure if they're listening. I know there's been a lot of communications from other levels of government, the region, actually all of the regions across the province, indicating how much room there is to grow. There's been a lot of advocacy from various nonprofit groups conveying that message that there is a lot of land to build on. And I don't think overnight we're going to see all of these areas just turn on and start constructing. There's still a lot of work that would have to be completed to get some of these sites to the point where they're actually building houses. So I think it's yet to be seen, and whether the province is listening at this point. I think we'd have to wait to see what their next move is.
But this, if I may, this plan that is put together, it's going to go from the region to the province, correct? And in that, will there be some wording saying, by the way, like we can cover, you know, this and double what you're asking, like, because I don't see the wording here. That's all I'm saying. Like I see it at our level, I see it in staff reports to this council, but I don't see it in this report.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Tyler Morin, essentially the region would send this. It would be up to regional council to send that message through a motion when they are adopting the regional official plan. I think just to put things into context as well, you know, this plan achieves several hundreds of thousands of units, and it was actually more than the units that were projected across the area municipalities in Durham region.
Right.
So there is a significant amount of growth proposed through this regional official plan, and then on top of that, you now have these greenbelt parcels. So there's quite a bit of growth.
Okay,
But
we're in the ballpark. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Mayor Collier.
Can we try this a third time? Thank you, Chair. Sorry, that was my fault, the technical difficulties. I kept pressing the speak button a second time and cutting myself off. My apologies. Ms. McCullough, I really like your opening comment about the never-ending MCR process. Feel the same. It's been going on for in excess of 6 years now, and really, here we are. Just on page, looks like 31 of the agenda, where you talk about the Uptown Regional Corridor, lands added to the Uptown Regional Center. This was one of the properties that this council directed the region to convert. And I wasn't aware that we had converted it to Uptown Center. I thought we had just converted it to residential to allow mixed use.
so through the chair to Mayor Collier, so this was a recommendation to go to the Uptown Regional Center because that permits that high density residential growth that you're actually looking for. So it actually permits much more wide ranging uses, and there are minimum density targets that are required in the regional centers that are far higher than most other areas in the town. So it should achieve that residential mixed use designation that you're looking for.
Okay, so this land is also one that was included in the 5 parcels this council recommended for or requested minister zoning orders from the Minister of Infrastructure and Housing. If the MZOs are issued on this lands, how would that affect what is being proposed in the draft RO?
So through the chair to Mayor Collier, the MZO would continue to apply to these lands, and that would be the in effect zoning. A lot of the uses are actually all of the uses that were identified in that minister zoning order are normally permitted in the Uptown Regional Center, but it would continue to require what those minimum requirements are on that MZO. This process would not change that.
Okay, and if the applicant did not fulfill the conditions that we set out in the MZO with regards to time or wanted to build what the MZO allows, it will just revert back to what is in the draft or ROP right now, the Uptown Center.
So through the chair to Mayor Collier, that would be up to the council because you would essentially have to request that minister zoning order be revoked, and then that underlying land use designation could then apply.
Okay, so assuming that's what I didn't say that, but I'm assuming council did make that request because those conditions weren't fulfilled.
Through the chair, we've crafted the MZO so that it makes sure that those minimum requirements that you requested in your motion would be included as minimums that they have to build those.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Ms. McCullough, for all your hard work. One final question. By us endorsing our comments today, we regional councilors are in no way endorsing the draft regional official plan as a whole, just the comments. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Mayor Potter, that's correct. We're still working on what that final looks like.
There are sections of it that I certainly do not support, and when it comes to council, I'll ask for those to be separated. But I just want to make sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Henry, it is your turn. Thank you for your patience, and I apologize for calling you Nancy before this. Sorry. It's your turn.
That's okay, not a problem. I just wanted to touch base through the chair to Mr. McCullen with regards to the comment you made of surplus lands for those watching at home. So surplus lands, if we were to take and use the land, sorry, I'm toggling screens here, the land designated prime agricultural in Ajax, if that was to be taken out of the Greenbelt and to be used, you're saying we would have surplus lands. But just to be clear, surplus lands does not necessarily equal surplus development, correct? Because, and I'm not advocating for this, I just want clarification, because in my understanding, the lands that we do have for development now are privately owned, and we cannot make people develop the lands that they own. So if we were to take lands out of the Greenbelt, which again, I'm not advocating for, my comment is surplus land does not equal surplus development necessarily, correct?
So through the chair to Councillor Henry, so when I refer to surplus lands, this is across the region. So essentially the region had to identify, it's like a big math exercise, and they have to identify how much land is needed to meet those minimum population forecasts that the growth plan establishes. And in this instance, they've gone through that exercise, and it may have been based on scenarios that this council may or may not have agreed with, but it's still that establishes what land is needed. And now having the surplus as additional land over and above what those requirements are until 2051. So if all of the lands that they've identified in this regional official plan were to be developed as envisioned by this plan, and when you were to add on those greenbelt lands on top of that, if all of those lands were to be developed and if housing construction were to be constructed, you would end up with a situation where you theoretically would have more, a higher population than was projected in the growth plan. Now, whether that's going to play out in that scenario, it's unlikely, but that's what I mean by surplus lands. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so through the chair, when you say unlikely, meaning that we don't know that all the lands that are currently been identified will be developed by the owners of those properties.
That's correct. The municipality can only go so far and designate the lands, and you're correct that it's up to those landowners to then move forward with their own timeframes for development.
So, so the folks at home understand, what is it that the municipality is doing to help and encourage the development of those lands that are already identified so as not to have to go into the Greenbelt for any reason?
Yep. So through the chair to Councillor Henry, so that's a good question. So a lot of this policy framework that's been included in here includes both intensification as well as outside of Ajax in other areas of the region is to identify lands for other residential growth. Now those areas are on what are referred to as white belt lands. They're not protected by the green belt boundary. So there's a lot of growth proposed on those lands that could protect the green belt if there's ample opportunity for residential growth on those areas.
Okay, so we can put a call out to those who own lands in Ajax to come to the planning department. We want to work with you.
So through the chair, we've got lots of land, I think, and this council's has seen a lot of development coming forward. So we continue to work with landowners.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you.
Thank you. If no one else has any other questions, I have just a couple. If you go back to your Greenbelt slide, one of the comments that you made in that was that the proponents would fully fund the necessary infrastructure up front. So if a developer were to develop on these Greenbelt lands and under the guidelines of Bill 23, if it's affordable housing, they wouldn't have to upfront anything, would they?
So to you, Madam Chair. So this, I believe, is more referring to those water and sanitary servicing costs and those large costs needed to allow residential growth to happen on those lands. So any developer would be required to actually construct that and enter into the necessary agreements with the region to make sure that that's all happening.
Doesn't that happen, sorry for my ignorance, but doesn't that happen now? Like, why would we have to say that?
To you,
It's
Madam
just
Chair.
added protection.
Yeah, so the region normally has a lot of capital projects and everything, and they are funded typically through either front-ending agreements or potentially through development charges, and area-specific development charges. But I think this was just the condition outlined by the province, and I think it'll be working with the region to ensure that this is all fully funded even before they get into construction. And in a lot of cases, a lot of these services have to be in the ground when they do start building those houses.
Right. So under the Carruthers, Carruthers Creek Watershed Plan, this is our comments going to the region, correct? That forces consultation, correct, with us?
To you, Madam Chair, yes, that's a policy that's been included. There's a number of policies that they have to go through, and they've included a policy that requires consultation with the area municipality.
And I noticed too that there's a section there that recognizes potential flooding. And if that were to happen, then the responsibility would be on the people developing. Is that correct? Essentially, is that what we're trying to get?
So to you, Madam Chair, yeah, so there's a number of policies in there, and yes, if there was a situation where flood mitigation infrastructure was required in Ajax, we would go through a process of identifying the cost-sharing responsibilities, who's responsible for what, and they would be responsible for any increase in flood, any infrastructure required due to the increase in flood levels based on their development. So there would be a process we would have to go through to figure all of that out.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Henry.
With regards to the land development charges that would be lifted, correct? If a landowner was to come with a proposal for affordable housing through the chair, this, correct me or please elaborate. Is this, and I've asked this question before, and I'm not I understand this correctly. Is it only referring to the amount of units that the development charge, like a percentage would come off? So if you were a landowner and you came to the town and you said, I want to build 35 stories high, 30, 40 of these units are going to be affordable housing, is the development charge based on a percentage and that will come off? It's not for the whole building, correct?
So through the chair to Councillor Henry, that's correct. So it would only be the units that are dedicated to affordable housing units that meet a definition in the Development Charges Act. Those units would not have to pay development charges. All of the other units would continue to pay the applicable development charge.
So through the chair, then that would be a selling feature for any landowners listening at home that own land in Ajax, that want to work with Ajax and the Ajax Planning Department to put more affordable housing units within their building plan, because it will benefit them, not necessarily us for development charges, but it will benefit them in the long run, the greater amount of units they have, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And it will cost the town of Ajax more. Thank you very much for your comments and your recommendation here. I don't think we have any further questions. So we have a motion that is moved by Councillor Morin and seconded by Councillor Bauer, that the comments contained in the report entitled Envision Durham Municipal Comprehensive Review Draft Regional Official Plan, the Town of Ajax comments, including the associated attachment, be endorsed, and that the copy of the report and comments contained therein be submitted to the Region of Durham. And the vote is now open. We need some Jeopardy music on. Oh, and that vote passes. Thank you very much. And that comes to the end of our meeting. I think we did pretty good tonight, guys. Pretty good, huh? All everybody cheer. Motion to adjourn is moved by Councillor Moran, seconded by Councillor Bauer. Actually, I should probably give it to Regional Councillor Lee since he didn't get to sign anything. Is that okay? Okay, we'll give that to Councillor Lee. That the April 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Community Affairs and Planning Committee be adjourned, and the vote is open. I can't imagine it not passing. Yes, passing. Yay! Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. That was awesome.